levels are reclaimed, you can add and maybe trail your stop. Feel better about it. But yeah, alts could look good here. If it's not, they are definitely reclaiming these levels at the moment, but they are showing everything I want to see thus far today.
Yeah, especially with BTC dominance dropping and the sentiment at all-time lows, I think, and nobody's calling for alt season.
Yeah,
I
dude.
think
Like
that's
I
a
think
good
we can.
I've got a
combination.
Yeah, I'm not the
got a
alt season guy.
question.
Never the alt
I've got
season
a
guy.
question. I've
But
got a question for you, Tim. There's this whole idea that we can't have an alt season if Bitcoin is shitting the bed at the level that it is right now. Do you see Bitcoin recovering somewhat and kind of getting into key levels? How do you see it playing out without dominance going back up again?
well, I don't really see Bitcoin in a bear market. To be honest with you,
Okay.
I see altcoins in a bear market, and I've yet to see outside of narrative-based plays. I've yet to see what anybody could argue as an alt season. I mean, we've had small legs, right? But like, if you've ever experienced an alt season, this ain't it. So to me,
No, it
like, if
ain't
you look
it.
at yeah, it's not it, right? So to me,
Mm.
this monthly chart is not. I mean, it's go back and look at previous legs down, and you'll see like here in March of 21, we had a 50% pullback, and what was followed by that 50% pullback
Was
was
alt
135%
mayhem.
move up, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's not out of the question that Bitcoin holds levels in this region and alts can get a massive bounce. But I do, however, think that alts are definitely going to trade differently than they have before because there's just so many new freaking pairs, right? So I think it will be definitely narrative based. I think there will be alts that are much, much stronger relatively than others, but arguably more of an alt season than we've had to this point.
Well,
How are you?
the only alt that we've actually seen, apologies, Folus, the only alt that we've seen do alt things is Zcash, is ZEC. If anyone's wondering what an alt season looks like, imagine pretty much most alts doing what Zcash did over the last month. That's your alt season.
Yeah, for sure. That's what an alt
Well,
season used to look like.
we've had runners, and this is the point that I've made several times before, is like we've had consistent runners this cycle, right? But it's been hot balls of money rotating from one narrative to the next without any staying power and any lasting bid. Like, if you just go back to even like the last 18 months, we had memes, then we had RWA, then we had AI agents, then we had, whatever the fuck it was. And there was constantly these narratives that lasted like 1, 2, 3 weeks, right? Then we had the perp dex narrative. Then we had you fucking Pulse. Then we had Zcash. You know what I mean? All these coins, there is a non-sustained bid, right? There is capital rotations into those coins. There are liquidity injections into those coins, but it doesn't last, right? And I think that guys playing for the 20x, for the 50x this cycle have been absolutely massacred, right? I spoke to a guy, you guys probably know him, DeFi Squared, one of the absolute ridiculous goat traders of the crypto space. I spoke to him in Singapore a month or two ago, and he said he made zero money off the AI XBT narrative, even though he was the one who got me onto it. I made a couple of grand. He was super early to it, but he mistakenly thought that narrative would have legs and that it would be one of the narratives to watch for 2025. I mean, not really. The coins pumped for like 3 weeks and then they all retraced back to their pre-listing prices, which is like indicative of the type of altcoins that we've had, the type of altcoin pumps that we've had this cycle. There's just no sustained bid. There's no major liquidity injection. I think guys looking for the 2021 playbook where you get plus 30% on a Monday, and you get plus 50% on a Tuesday, and then to wrap it all off, you get a 2x on a Friday to finish the week on a solid like plus 300% on the week, right? Guys looking for that kind of price action have been left disappointed because if anyone remembers trading 2021, it was like that. You would wake up and all your coins would be double-digit percentages to the green, and there'd be some random outlier like Filecoin or Storage or Solana or AVAX that would be like 3x off the lows, right? And that was pretty normal for 2021. But yeah, as I said, adapt and survive, or else you will perish in this game. Luke, want to go to you next. How are you viewing How are you viewing Bitcoin? How are you viewing the current state of the market?
Okay, so for me, I think I was looking earlier at and I've spoken about this before, the typical 4-year cycle. And I think whatever happens over the next few months, the market's going to be, I think we can basically put to bed the idea that Bitcoin and crypto as a whole is going to continue within this 4-year cycle that it has done for a while. So let me just pull up a screen share here, if that will work. Is it there? So by all accounts, the timing of this cycle should have ended. So from the halving, the previous 2 times that we've had the halving, it's topped out around about 78 weeks later. That happened when we hit the top on this cycle as well. And that's something that I spoke about like a couple of years ago, was always expecting to be out of the market by this stage. So by October of this year, I was kind of expecting to be out anyway. But I'm not feeling as if, at least for Bitcoin, that we are going into that. And I think the whole market in general is kind of characteristic of the people that are now within each of the assets. So Bitcoin now being held a lot by the larger institutions that are going to have a much more patient outlook. Maybe volatility is going to slowly start to diminish, and we just end up in a situation where we have these pullbacks, we have these long ranges that play out, we go a little bit higher, we have these pullbacks, long ranges play out, and so on. And then for altcoins, as you guys have been mentioning, this the people that are trading the altcoins have a much shorter attention span than what people in 2021 did and what people in 2017 did, because that's just generally the way that like humans are going at the moment. And I think that's why we've been seeing just these really short-lived narratives that have like one pump and then that it's all over, and then it moves on to the next one and moves on to the next one. So I think the idea of these 4-year cycles now, there's still going to have an effect. Obviously, the halving's still going to have an effect. Altcoins hopefully will, that maybe we will get one of those alt seasons. Jedi, actually, one of the question that you asked earlier, like actually the 2 major alt seasons that we've had on the previous cycles did happen after Bitcoin topped. And that's like generally when we got these just crazy pumps from a load of just random shit. And that could still happen even if Bitcoin just decides to range here for the next few months. So that's something that I'm paying attention to. Like in my mind, I thought I would want to be out of the market at this stage. But then you look at Ethereum, you look at Solana, you look at all of these altcoins that are just crushed, and really it's only Bitcoin that's had this sustained uptrend. So I'm like I mentioned this in my channel this morning. I have gone into some longs, and basically for me it was just off the basis that I think for the first time in a long time, like when I've been on these roundtables over the past few weeks, I've been massively bearish altcoins, and now that's starting to change. So I like where the market has come into. I made a few mistakes last week. I tried to bid this higher low that never played out and got stopped, but then just letting this extend down, and now I've started to DCA in. And this really could, like, for me, the bare minimum was making sure I could get kind of a 1-to-1 off of this to begin with, start to scale in, and then let's see if we can go to new highs afterwards, and we can start to manage this. It's quite a fluid trade. So what I'm seeing now from order flow and from the market in general, we have Bitcoin dominance dropping. That's the first time in a few months that we've seen any like actual drop in Bitcoin dominance. A lot of the altcoins, whilst Bitcoin was dropping, again, this happens whilst I'm sleeping, whatever time of day it was, afternoon in US session, whatever it is this is happening, as I wake up and this morning for me, I was just looking at a lot of the altcoins, and like XRP on the 4-hour, it was just kind of chilling. It was just putting in these wicks and just holding as Bitcoin was dumping. BNB doing exactly the same thing. It was putting these wicks to the downside, but just holding overall. And it was just the first time for a while that I've seen that shift in just there's actual demand here. and I hadn't seen that for a while. So that was why this morning, getting into, well, I got into along yesterday. It was supposed to be a scalp, and now it's turning it into more of a swing trade. So it's a really difficult market right now to try and time or to try and trade and to catch the lows. But I think for the first time in a while, we're seeing potential for there to be some kind of relief here. I'm not expecting it to just bounce back up really quickly. Ideally for me, we still come down and we test these lows a few more times. We range for a little while here, and then let's just see how the next few weeks goes. But yeah, we're just going into like uncharted territory a little bit, whereby we haven't really had an alt season. From a timing perspective, the bull market should have ended, but the charts still actually look pretty decent here. So yeah, we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, I still have this weird obsession with the extended market idea, and I think that the potential catalyst, and I've been saying this for months, is Jerome Powell's replacement in whatever it is, May next year, or whenever he's due to step down. Just being a Trump shill, just being a Trump appointee who does whatever Trump wants, and Trump just cutting rates in a ridiculous fashion with no concern for the long term economic ramifications, and that gives us our blow off top to the cycle, where risk assets like Bitcoin and various alts go like 2x and then absolutely nuke, and we get a proper crypto winter in 2027. I think there's like, I think there's a, I'm not saying that that's likely to happen or probable to happen, but I give that like, I don't know, definitely around 20% odds, something like that, which is kind of crazy to think about. We won't survive until May. No, keep your chin up, bro. Survival is half the battle. That's all it is. Yeah, just don't get liquidated. I want to go to Rouge next. Rouge, how are you viewing BTC at the moment? What are your general thoughts on the market, and how have you been trading it?
First of all, I have to apologize because I'm in my car, so my microphone and the overall sound might be skewed.
It's all
And
good.
I almost bumped into someone. No, well, my view on the market, Bitcoin has touched the decision, pretty much the most important last level, last resort, being it the high time frame 1-to-1 sitting at roughly 89, sorry, 0.6k, something like that. It has lost yearly open, so I was already being in kind of a defeat mode with Bitcoin, as you might have seen in the chat. I have longed several times around the region of yearly open plus the macro GP from the 74k low to 88, which is roughly 94.5 to 92.6 on Bybit, perps, and this region completely failed. I wasn't interested in longing below that, so I kind of am just letting Bitcoin play out a bit for the moment. It is like way too early to tell if this is uh, the bottom, because we're pretty much approaching the first major resistance, which is weekly open at 94 roughly. Weekly open lines up with the 707 from the last high to the closest low. It also is PDPOC of PDPOC, just previous day POC. So decision, we've had a logical bounce at the 1-to-1. Now it's time to prove if buyers still have some steam left, or if any resistance is just going to be a wall that Bitcoin is smacking its head on. My personal plan today is to short if we have a reaction towards weekly open PDPOC and that region, because this is something that I've pretty much said over and over again in 2025. Every time we were slow bleeding, the the first reflex of the usual trader will always to be longing the dips, thinking that this is the bottom. And what I've always been telling is, when you see that we're in a clear bearish trend, just wait for price to show you bullish structure on a higher time frame before you try and time in a bottom. It's always better to enter on a retrace or not enter at all and be sidelined and at least not lose money rather than just longing every possible dip. And you have increased chances to be successful if you do short. And if you start with the principle that highs are not taken, because let's be honest, when was the last time a major pivot on a H4 or daily chart got taken on Bitcoin? I I don't know. It's been days, days, and days of just down only. So yeah, pretty much that's my view. We're in a very, very important moment. I think Osbra said that early on. Below 100k, it's grim. It's just grim, and I pretty much think that it will be just a slow death. And I also heard you guys talk about altcoins. I pretty much don't have experience with altcoins, but what I can say from the perspective of someone who's completely out of this game of alts, after what happened on 1010, altcoins, alt season, how I do not see any future where something like that could happen, because the Binance cartel pretty much showed to the whole world that they could nuke altcoins to legit zero or very close to zero. I saw one exchange, I cannot remember which one, where ETH nuked to $600. In what world can you make people believe into the relevancy of altcoins when some people with a good amount of money can propel everything to zero in the span of hours? We didn't talk about days. Binance pressed market sell and everything went to shit in 4 hours. People lost everything, even with the smallest of leverage on alts. So if you show that to people, how does it make sense that you you want them to buy? Like it does. It's like I'm telling you. Well, from one day to another, everything that you have can go to zero, but it's a good buy. Alt season, good. Pretty much that's my current state. It might sound like I'm crashing out, like I often do, but I'm someone who's kind of well, you know me by now. I have some. I take
Can I
things to heart.
can I
Go ahead.
just
Go
come
ahead,
in here?
Jedi.
Yeah, I think Rouge. I think for the most part, possibly even 90% of alts. I think you are 100% correct, and I think from a liquidity perspective, we'll never see alt seasons like we did in the past because there simply isn't enough liquidity to go around with all these alts anyways. I think there is a case, however, to be made for a select group of alts that actually do have kind of the mindshare community and all that kind of hypothetical stuff. Yes, we are reaching the end of that kind of narrative as a whole, but I think there still is room to consider a scenario where Asta, Hype, Solana, and kind of the majors, and maybe even some of the smaller ones actually do run super hard because there is sufficient liquidity around and there is mind
Yeah,
share. So
I,
yeah,
I'm excluding Solana, all the stuff like the big alts majors. Just
yes,
on on the top of my head, I can think about ETH, Solana sustained the damage. I think BNB too sustained some of the damage, but even we've had this conversation in the crypto chat earlier this
mm,
afternoon, and
mm.
me personally, I do invest in real life. I do not invest in crypto for the sole reason that I find this absolutely abnormal that an asset in which you're supposed to invest, park money so that it generates profit, can go minus 20%, minus 30% a day. And we're talking about Bitcoin. These guys over at Binance made it dip from 122 to 100 in a single day. How is like there is no world in which gold will do minus 20% in a single day, or any FX pair, or whatever product asset that you're trading related to traditional finance, unless there's World War III happening. But in that case, everything goes to shit, and crypto probably goes to zero even.
Remember when gold went to minus?
It was petrol, not gold.
Yeah, oil. Sorry.
Oil,
Yeah,
oil,
but
yeah,
it can
oil.
happen, and it has happened.
It
Not to
it
gold,
was
but to
oil,
bigger
and
markets.
why did it happen? It happened because of clowns playing the futures game. Because of traders. Again, it went to negative. Negative, I think $11 or something like that. It was insane. But yeah, oil is something very special. It's very special. It's a very special asset. I'm not going to venture into that because I have not the sufficient knowledge. But if you want to talk about just purely investment and state of the market, 1010, I think for me is a pivotal point in the whole history of cryptocurrencies in general. And even though I've not been trading crypto for a long time, barely a year now, of actively doing that, what happened during that night was everything but normal. And I said it on stream. I find it I'm very surprised that these guys are still alive and they didn't get killed by anyone, because they deliberately made market makers lose hundreds of millions, even though they wouldn't admit to that. So, yeah, that's pretty much my take.
I think I think you are. I think there's an argument here. Well, not an argument, but there is a point to be made around the regulatory aspect of an industry like this. I think the biggest problem that we have right now is that on the one side of the fence, a lot of people like kind of like this cowboy Wild West thing, and then on the other side of the fence is this demand for regulation. And I think this is where the maturity of this industry needs to actually reach a point where we actually have accountability and systems and checks in place to allow for good business to take place and for the likes of the Binances to go and fuck
Yeah,
themselves. And
but
I'm
Jedi,
all for that.
the whole point of crypto is to be without any control. So that's the basic, the premises of crypto and the inception of that stuff is to have an unregulated market. The problem with an unregulated market is that things like that happen. There's no police, so you can expect crime. And and I see people unhappy, sad, crying, heartbroken. But guys, we are in a gigantic casino, but we have the edge. But still, we are in a gigantic casino, and we don't make the rules.
Yeah,
We
we don't.
have to. We like what's the word in English? Osbra, how do you say subir in English?
Suffer. Basically.
Yeah, well, we eat the consequences of the rules
Yeah.
other people make, if you want, if it makes sense. And we have nothing. We as retail, I mean, we have nothing. We cannot play against those people. The best we can do is try to inflow with them, like to go with the flow, the direction they take. And it's at the end of the day, it's casino, but with edge on our side.
I think the same can be said
FX.
for just about anything though, because we can't control almost anything that goes on in the world. That's why we manage
Yeah.
risk, and why managing your risk is so important. So you control what you can control, and that's why a lot of the time, if people are asking, like for myself, like about anything that's going on in the wider world, I'm like, I don't give a shit. Like I don't care what they're up to, because it still moves. As long as the markets move, then that's opportunity. It doesn't matter who's moving the markets. There's opportunity, and as long as, like, okay, yeah, I got nuked on 1010 because I didn't manage my risk, because I wasn't watching the charts, and I wasn't even aware that it was happening. But if you manage risk, and that's why, like, having stop losses is such a big important part of trading, then you're not going to be subject to the downside risk that's there. That'll be for other people to worry about, not yourself. But yeah, you can't don't worry about things you can't control. And that's like one of the really nice things about crypto and about the way that this is going to evolve over the next few years is we're going to be like the next cycle that we have, everything's going to be tokenized. Stocks are going to be tokenized, and they're starting to become even more volatile. And you're going to have a load of new companies going public, and it's like the opportunity for altcoins as we know them, and the opportunity within crypto as we know it might be fading from traditional releasing tokens and this kind of thing, but there's going to be other opportunities. There's going to be prediction markets. There's going to be stocks coming on chain. There's going to be all this other stuff. So yeah.
A few months ago, I was pitched the idea of a Bitcoin ETF token. Now, think about that one for a second. Think about what the Bitcoin ETF is. It is a way of gaining exposure to the crypto market without actually owning any Bitcoin or without actually owning any crypto. So now they're tokenizing that. So you can gain exposure to a thing that gives you exposure to the crypto market. It is a token of a token, which I found was completely ridiculous, but I think that's probably the direction we're going. I want to stay on the topic of altcoins for the moment. I want to go back over to Purdue. Purdue, how, particularly with regards to what Rouge just said, and let's call that a bearish outlook, right? And I agree with a lot of those points, right? How do you convince investors? How do you convince sideline capital to put liquidity into an asset class that can go minus 85% in a single day? What's your take on that? How do you view the altcoin market in general?
Yeah, it's difficult to put that to make a legit argument for institutionals to buy something that goes 85% in minus 85% in a day. Of course, that's not a hot take. That's something quite logical to think. But yeah, I think still, if you play the right rotations for altcoins, and there are still a lot of opportunities in markets like AI and like, for example, if you look at all the AI stuff that got brought out, eventually it's all vaporware. But if you play the rotation correctly, eventually it's about making money. And if you play the rotations correctly, then eventually we're all traders, and it's not a buy. I mean, I think Rouge doesn't hold Bitcoin as well. He's a trader as well, and he trades Bitcoin. It's not that he believes in the tech of Bitcoin. He believes in making money out of Bitcoin. And I'm believing that I can make money with altcoins, so I trade altcoins. It's not that I believe in the tech or so. And I don't think there's a legit argument to make that an asset class that can go minus 85% is worth buying for institutionals, but still you see a lot of demand, for example, Solana, for an AVAX ETF, for a Pengu ETF. So they're still lining up, and that are just facts. And that's something that we can't deny, right?
What altcoins have your attention right now, and what altcoins do you think our members should be focusing on for the remainder of the month and indeed the remainder of the year? It's a tough question, I know, but if you had to pick a certain group of let's say if you had to pick a certain narrative, if you had to pick a coin or two to look at. I mean, obviously Aster has people's attention now. I think you were one of the first people to suggest to me that I should be looking at Aster based on the potential that
Binance
CZ
blockchain,
shills it at Binance blockchain. So maybe let's talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, I think betting on the bigger players that are influencing the market is still the best thing to do. Like betting on CZ and not betting against CZ, that's a good thing to do. As you can see, Aster is already up 35% from his entry. I think CZ's entry, people were laughing about it when he bought it at $1, 0.9, and it's up 40% already from his entry within a month. I mean, that are things that you can't accomplish with trading stocks or trading Bitcoin, I think that is the key value in trading altcoins, that if you know the right narratives, is that you can still make a lot of money on them. And same goes for Horizon. Zen has been up versus Bitcoin a lot. I can share my screen, but I can talk about it. Horizon, for example, Grayscale is going to do an IPO. And basically all the coins that are in Grayscale's portfolio are worth keeping an eye on. So yeah, when a crypto company goes public and they have a lot of good looking altcoins in their portfolio, why shouldn't you pull the trigger, open up the chart on your trading view and look if they look good, if there's real demand. And if you look at Horizon, for example, or Tau hasn't been really strong, but it's pretty much compressing above the $300 level. These are all coins that have that are trading in the Grayscale portfolio. So I think once Grayscale goes public, you sell them. But I think in the road to the IPO, I think these coins are really interesting to watch. So main takeaway, just bet on the big players like Barry Silbert. Don't fade him. Don't fade CZ, and I think you're good to go.
Okay, and that segues very nice, I think, into, let's call this the last topic of discussion because I'm conscious of time. Speaking of big players, I want to talk for a moment about Sailor, and I want to talk about Master. I want to talk about strategy buying Bitcoin. There's been a lot of chatter on the timeline over the last couple of days about Sailor, quote unquote, top blasting. I mean, I find it a bit ridiculous because as we have, as we have seen again and again, Sailor is not concerned with technicals. He's not concerned with buying BTC because it's cheap today. He wants to buy BTC because he knows or he believes that it will be expensive tomorrow. His purchases are always proactive. They are never reactive. He doesn't see a market dip and go, this is a good time to buy. He doesn't see BTC approaching a support level and think this is a good time to buy. He always buys because he knows that he's looking at price targets in 2030, 2035, whatever it is. He has a very long-term price horizon, and the majority of CT can't appreciate that. So I'm curious to know, this is an open question to our panel of experts, of chads, of traders. What do you guys think of Sailor, his strategy, and do you think that this is something? I specifically want to get Jedi's opinion on this. So I hope you speak up, Jedi. What do you think about the systemic risk that an entity like Sailor presents for the crypto ecosystem, for the Bitcoin ecosystem?
So I think the obvious potential outcome is that Bitcoin price drops to the extent that he has to then go and find the money to pay off his loan. I think he's accounted for that. I don't think people actually appreciate the intelligence that this man has. I mean, by no means is he not going to make mistakes. He's made mistakes in the past. He's lost a tremendous amount of money in the past, and a lot of people kind of hold him ransom around that. But I think in terms of the way that he's going about his loans and the way that he manages them, I don't think that's going to land up being a problem for him. I think Sailor's problem is going to be himself. I think he's kind of like his own worst enemy, and I'm not entirely sure what that looks like. So if there is a systemic risk, I think it's going to come from the man himself. I don't think it's going to come because of margin calls and that kind of thing. I can't really elaborate around what I mean. It's more a sense, it's more a feeling that if there is an issue, I think he's gonna be the guy. And I think the clues are that he doesn't give a shit. Why doesn't he fucking hire a quant to give him insights so he can go and buy Bitcoin at opportune moments and still achieve the goals that he wants to achieve? Is beyond me. It just doesn't add up for me. Is it because he ultimately is a meme lord that he wants to play this kind of like comedic role where he gets to stand on a soapbox and tell everyone, well, I don't care about price today. I only care about acquiring as much Bitcoin as I can. I think that's part of it. I think he genuinely wants people to kind of scratch their heads about him. I think he is a bit of a meme lord. In the event, however, that things do go south, let's just imagine what that actually means for the market and for Bitcoin. I think it would be fairly catastrophic, but I think the positive of that is that we'll end up getting prices on Bitcoin that we probably will never see again. I sure as hell know that I'll be buying if Bitcoin goes to fucking 10K or whatever the case might be. So I think even though a lot of people, I know that what's his name, fucking Peter Schiff, the biggest LARP in known universe, has come out and said he wants to debate he wants to debate Saylor around how MicroStrategy or strategy is going to go to zero and it's going to be bankrupt. I mean, I actually think my 14-year-old son could debate Peter Schiff. So I don't really think any kind of outcome that's going to give us any insight into MicroStrategy as an outcome will come from that debate. I think there is a debate that needs to be had though, with an intelligent person with Saylor to kind of like question what it is that he's doing in terms of diluting kind of shareholder value and all the rest of it. I think there is a problem there. I don't think it is a net positive around that. But then Saylor will argue, I'm sure, that yes, it might not be a net positive for shareholders today or next year or for the next 5 years, but in 15 or 20 years, it's going to be a hell of a fucking positive for them. So just sit down, hang tight, and then you will see the returns down the line. So Saylor's playing the long game. Saylor doesn't actually give a fuck, and he doesn't want people to think any other way. So it's a combination of calculated risk, very much intelligent, and also playing the meme lord part to conclude my answer.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you hit the nail on the head there. Saylor really doesn't give a shit. Saylor has obligations to shareholders and he has obligations to his company. And when he talks bullish about BTC, he's doing it with a specific intention, and that is to signal to the world, to signal to the economy that he has incredible conviction in this asset class and he thinks it's going to go to the moon, et cetera, et cetera. Always, always, always take what he says about Bitcoin with a pinch of salt. Because as I said, that's his job. His job is to be as bullish as possible on Bitcoin and to have as lofty a target as possible for Bitcoin's price, especially in the long term. Same question goes to the rest of the panel. What do you guys think about Saylor in general? Do you think that there is a systemic risk inherent in someone like Saylor being such a focal, pivotal point in the crypto ecosystem?
This might sound stupid, but I don't even know what MicroStrategy is about, aside from him buying crypto. And I think it speaks volume about the character. I have legitimately no idea what Saylor does aside from buying Bitcoin. This is just signaling that his whole internet presence is only about him buying Bitcoin.
Yeah. So I mean, but maybe that's enough. Maybe maybe it's kind of
But that is the point. That's
that
exactly the point. Yes, that's exactly the fucking point, and he has succeeded just for the simple question that you've asked now, Rouge. It's like it's actually insane, but that's the whole point.
That's all I wanted to share.
that's yeah. I mean that's completely fair. I mean, I definitely can't tell you anything about Saylor beyond his participation in the Bitcoin ecosystem. But yeah, I mean, does anyone else have anything to add to that, just in terms of specifically talking about Saylor? I mean, like, I'll just reiterate the point that I made already. People were goofing on Saylor for quote unquote top blasting. Last year when BTC was in a range from 55K to 70K or whatever it was, and every time price went up and Saylor bought, the same idiots on my timeline were goofing on him, and then price would go down again. The thing is, there were various points in the last year. In fact, more often than not, Saylor was in profit on all of his buys, right? Now, that's obviously changed a little bit over the last month or two because we've had this downside price action from early October until now. But, there was a period just 5 weeks ago or 6 weeks ago, there was a time where Saylor was in profit on all of his buys. Right now, a lot of those buys are currently underwater, especially that BTC is now trading below yearly low. It means by definition, all of his buys from 2025 are underwater. But the thing is, again, I do not think he gives a shit. His job is not to predict. His job is not to react to what BTC is doing in the short, medium, or even like long term. It's macro. He's thinking about this in decades. The reason he's putting so much of his capital on the line and his reputation on the line, it's not because he thinks BTC is cheap today. It's because he thinks it will be expensive tomorrow. And that's his whole modus operandi, is just adding exposure to his books over time so that when BTC trades at $1 million or whatever he thinks it will be in 2035 or 2033 or whatever it is, that he has the right amount of exposure and he can capitalize. That's effectively all he's doing. So guys goofy on his buy levels. I don't think they fully understand what his goal is.
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly what I was saying in the chat. Like, we saw a lot of people mocking him every time we get the news that Strategy bought Bitcoin, because people were saying, oh, he's mocking the top, he's a top signal, he's a noob, blah, blah, blah. First, I'd like to be a top signal if it makes me sit on a multi-billion dollars unrealized PNL, right? Because all these guys mocking Sailor have never achieved like probably 1% of what he achieved. PNL wise. The second thing, as you said, is like it is more about conviction than just like, oh, I'm buying Bitcoin because I think it's cheap. And the fun story is that he's mocked because he's a personal figure, he's a public figure. And for example, if you take the example of one guy on Twitter, I'm not gonna say the name, but probably everyone will know who I'm talking about. That guy shared his story. He's been buying Bitcoin every day, like $30 every day, whatever the price was. So obviously, sometimes he was buying at the top, at local top. Sometimes he was buying at the local bottom because he was buying every day. And today he's sitting at like a portfolio worth 7 figures, right? And people praise him like, oh my God, you're such a Chad legend, blah, blah, blah. But when it's Sailor, like people are like, ah, noob, asshole, you bought the top, blah, blah, blah. No, he's been buying like at every single level, whatever the price was, just because he has conviction. Yeah, so you guys said it, just like Rego had conviction. And probably when Rego was attending family dinners and he said, oh, I bought Bitcoin at $3,000, and the next day Bitcoin was at like 2,000, people were saying, ah, you bought the top, you're never going to make it. And history prove him right. So yeah, this is what I had to say about Sailor. But at the same time, I think that yes, he's a systemic risk for the ecosystem, because if something bad happens to, first in terms of image, if something bad happens to him or to strategy, then obviously it will have like a hit on the crypto credibility, whatever it's short term, mid term, long term, but it will have a hit. And even worse, if something bad happens to his holdings, let's say he gets liquidated, or something much more simple that people never think about. If sometimes he sell, if someday he sells like his holdings, then obviously it will have a negative impact, because first, because of the signal, because of the fear that is going to create, the panic it's going to create. Probably like, oh, Sailor started to sell, it's over. So imagine the reaction, the cascade that it will like create, and obviously the selling pressure that it will add to the order book. So yes, I think he is a risk for a lot of reasons. He is definitely a risk.
I mean, it's like Morad. I saw a post this morning. I'm about to share it in the chat. Morad is sitting on like, $20 million or something like that. It's crazy, but it's all illiquid. It's all in these meme coins that will probably go to zero if he starts trying to sell them. So people are saying that even though he has 20 or 30 million UPNL, let's say on paper, if he tries to sell that, it's probably going to amount to like less than 5 million, because once he sells his first coin, everyone's going to start unloading their bags. And, even by virtue of the fact that he owns such a large amount of the supply of these coins, he's going to nuke the charts even just on his own, even without that panic being caused. So, I mean, yeah, it's a tough spot for guys like that, main characters who have, a huge amount of capital invested in the ecosystem. It's a catch-22. You can't realize those profits without nuking the market. And I think that's something that people always need to be aware of, because at some point people do take profit. And when that happens, you want to be the guy. You want to be the guy who's, who's already out at that point, or at least you want to have a substantial amount out of the market by that point. You do not want to be holding the bag when something like that happens, whether it's Morad selling his meme coins or say they're beginning to offload his BTC. You do not want to be left holding the bag. But on that note, guys, we're going to call it there. I want to thank my panelists for joining us for today's discussion. Osbert Jedi, Luke, Tim, Rouge, and we had Purdue earlier. Always a pleasure talking to these chads. I want to thank all of you for joining us for an hour. It's always a pleasure being able to talk with you guys, and I appreciate you guys giving us your time. We will be back next week, of course, for another team roundtable. Until then, stay safe. We'll see you in the server later on, and yeah, we have a bunch more events, live streams, etc., coming up later in the week. So we'll see you on those as well. Take it easy, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day.